My name is Veena Krishnamoorthy. I have about 24 years of experience working in financial services, predominantly in the digital financial service markets in Asia and Africa. And the last 7 years, I've been working with UNHCR, looking at improving access to financial services, especially social cash transfers for displaced population in Southern Africa as well as in Jordan. UNHCR over the last few years has really understood the need for looking at financial inclusion as a tool to build resilience for the forcibly displaced population. Over the last 5-6 years, there have been two financial inclusion strategies that has been developed by UNHCR with various partners as well as with financial sector providers to provide guidance in terms of understanding the niche needs that exist within the forcibly displaced population. There has also been several toolkits that have been developed with partnership with UNCDF, CGAP, AFI, and others that really focus on highlighting and helping provide a better understanding of the needs that are specific to the FTPs, the kind of regulatory challenges that exist, as well as the business case that is there for financial service providers to really understand and bring a better understanding as well as serve this population. There have been several models that have been implemented in Jordan, as well as other Middle Eastern countries that focus on the use of biometric. There have been blockchains that have been used in the Ukraine response in Europe, as well as several access to capital programs that have worked in Uganda. As UNHCR has started leveraging on the use of financial inclusion as a method of building resilience for the displaced population, there have been several studies that have been commissioned to really understand the financial behaviors and some of the coping strategies that are used by FTPs. There's one that was recently done in Jordan with GIZ that really focused on how can we use human-centric design to improve the use of mobile money with women in the refugee camps in Jordan. There was one work that was done by MSc in Zambia that looked at how to digitize social cash transfer that was provided by UNHCR to the displaced population. There were studies that was done in Democratic Republic of Congo, just to name a few. But in general, if we look at forcibly displaced population, we need to look at them with two lenses. One is the lens of displaced population that is external to the country, that is refugees and asylum seekers. And then we look at the IDP population because though the coping strategies may be similar, when it comes to access to formal services, the differences are, of course, the rights that the citizens have versus the rights of a non-citizen. We also need to look at it with a lens of whether the population have mobility restrictions, access to work, because there are populations that are camp-based that might not be allowed to leave the camps. There are issues in terms of access to work permits or access to legal work within countries. Very few of the countries that host refugee population actually provide access to work to this population. That means that the needs really vary based on whether the basic needs of the population are being met, whether they have access to food, access to rent, so on and so forth, or whether, because once these needs are addressed, that is when the focus goes on within this population on building resilience, looking at livelihood activities, looking at building on the existing livelihood activities so that they need access to credit, access to savings, so as to expand what they are doing. Financial behaviors are really linked to the stage that the population are in, whether they are responding to an emergency situation or whether they have been in the country or in a displacement state for a year, 2 years, because that really shapes how decision-making is done, how the behavior patterns change. As with any inclusive product design, it is really critical to understand the needs of the population. We start from there, right? We start from what it is that this population needs, and then understanding the political and regulatory environment, so that when financial services are designed, they go beyond just addressing the immediate need to really building a long-term relationship that can result in improving services for the population, building resilience, as well as for the financial service providers to have a core group of population that will expand their bottom line as well. There have been various innovative ideas that have been used. Of course, identity gaps remain. Access to identity documents that are recognized by the host country is one of the challenges that UNHCR grapples with, especially for access to formal financial services. Even with internally displaced population, using the example of Democratic Republic of Congo, valid IDs with the population is very limited. There is voters ID, but the voters ID are no longer valid or have been lost during displacement. So that remains one of the challenges that the humanitarian sector has been grappling with for a very long time. There have been some innovations that have been brought in. For example, the use of biometric as a way to authenticate the population to ensure that there is deduplication, as well as to ensure that the financial service access is going to the right people, following the regulatory requirements that are in country. In Zambia, there was work that was done with the Reserve Bank of Zambia, as well as with ZICTA, the Telecom Regulatory Authority, to ensure that SIM card can be registered in the population's name, and through which mobile money can be used, leveraged by this population, by ensuring that refugee IDs and asylum seeker certificates issued by the Commissioner of Refugees, the government of Zambia, is a valid ID document. There are several activities that have been done, especially through the work that AFI is doing, to advocate for these ID documents to be used. Cash coordination groups in several countries are really coordinating and working together to bring the voice of the displaced population to the regulatory authorities to help them really understand the need of the population, as well as to have ID documents of this population be recognized, whether through simplified KYC process. As resource constraints grow and needs grow as well, especially with the change and with climate change that we are facing, we are seeing more displacement, and more we are seeing that resources are going down. There is much more need in terms of coordination of activities that are being done by various UN agencies working in the humanitarian space, the MDBs that are in existence, as well as DFIs that are working in different countries. It is really important to see the forcibly displaced population as part of the ecosystem, rather than a separate segment of population that needs to be addressed. World Bank is doing a lot of work through their IDA window to ensure that refugee population are included in the development plans of the countries, and then coordinating with different agencies that are working to look at financing these development plans that include refugees. Zambia is a good example of that. Through the recent drought in the last 2 years that Zambia has been facing, World Bank has come forward through the IDA window to work with the government of Zambia with the condition that refugees are also included in the plans, so that there are no parallel systems that are being built. Often, that is one of the challenges that we're seeing in the urge to serve the population in an immediate way. Parallel systems are being built rather than leveraging the existing systems that are already in place in countries. So I would say that when we are looking at responses, when we are looking at solutions, it is really important to ensure that we keep in mind that parallel systems often have chances of failing or being limited to a particular funding need that has been provided, rather than using an approach where we leverage existing systems that are in place, especially formal financial systems that are in place, so that the solutions that are being offered to the population, one, keeps in mind the needs of the population, but two, also ensures that mainstreaming is done. So that would be a suggestion that I would have. There are various innovations that have come in. So mobile wallets in Jordan is a good example, but there's also biometric that is being used to authenticate population. And there has been several years of transaction history that has been developed through these accounts managed by UNHCR. There are, the mobile wallets that are being used in Zambia, again, programs dating back to 4-5 years. DRC, again, refugee-owned bank accounts that are provided by TMB, where transaction history has been developed. One of the challenges really has been leveraging the data using credit scoring, as we have done in other countries with low-income population, with rural population, to provide access to credit, which has helped in building resilience. That has not happened as much in the humanitarian space. And I think there is, even though the question was really on what can be learned, I think the lessons learned is mostly that we could do much more. That could provide a win-win situation both for financial service providers as well as the humanitarian population, especially in providing access to savings, access to credit, access to insurance, a much needed service at the time of high climate change. Several of the refugee population, hundreds and thousands of refugee population, especially in Africa, rely on small agriculture to really sustainable sustenance agriculture to really manage their livelihoods. With climate change, that is one of the biggest impact that we are seeing, and having access to these financial services through building a credit scoring model can really help in building resilience and building a win-win situation for both parties involved. As alluded to earlier, we are seeing organizations like World Bank stepping up, looking at helping countries include refugees in their development plans. Governments in Africa, especially in Southern Africa, have been very generous with donation of land to host the population that have been displaced. However, there has not been as much resources that are provided, be it changes in policy, be it changes in regulatory frameworks that allow these land to be used economically well. There are also access to credit challenges that this population faces. I think there is a real and felt need to move beyond seeing the humanitarian situation as just a humanitarian situation, and then look at this population as a way to improve the ecosystem that they live in, with a win-win situation for both. I think advocates in the financial inclusion space really need to leverage the data that is already available to work with MDBs and financial service providers